Grummon's family, I'd like to say welcome. Our desire this afternoon is absolutely to celebrate a wonderful life of somebody that means a tremendous amount to all of us. So we want to celebrate that. We want to remember that. We want to seal some of these collective memories in all of our psyches and in our hearts. I don't know if I know somebody that was better than Whitney Grummon at meeting us where we needed to be met, right? Sometimes it was with her big heart. Oftentimes it was with her, let's get to work. Because she absolutely did that, didn't she? So we're gonna hear some music. We're gonna hear a few folks say some things. We're gonna celebrate a wonderful person that's impacted us, and we're gonna make that as memorable as we can. So thank you for being here. What a tremendous collection of folks that have been impacted by a very unique lady. It's super to see parents, alumni, our students, our staff, here to celebrate Whitney, a friend, a teacher, a colleague, family member, a wife. So there's people that are going to be able to say things better than me. But let me do this, because there's some fun things that I want you guys to be aware of here. There's some great efforts that are going into place to make sure, little things like look at the heart wreath here. That was made by the 5th grade kids at CHS for Whitney and for the family. We have from the Sandpiper. If you guys have not seen it, have you seen the special edition of the Sandpiper? All of our students received it at school. There's a few copies in the back, and we could probably find ways for you to get it. Special tribute to Whitney Grummon. Something you should get, you should take a chance to read. It's good stuff. If you haven't yet, think about the scholarship. Our goal is an endowment for $1,000 to be awarded to a Carmel High graduate annually in the name of Whitney Grummon. So consider contributing to that scholarship, and let's continue to remember Whitney and the impact she's had on our students and our school and all of us. So consider that scholarship. I think that's a great way to think about it. In the back, and you've seen the tables, there's guest books. Take a moment to sign the guest book and maybe say something to Sean and Haven and Sage. They'll get those guest books and take a chance to leave a memory for them at those guest books. You know, each year our Padre Parent PTO sponsors basically a student body selection of the Mentor of the Year and Teacher of the Year. Traditionally, somebody can't earn that distinction in consecutive years. This year was not a normal year, and we'll announce this again later at our student recognition assembly, but it's probably not a surprise that Whitney Grummon this year was selected by our student body as both the Mentor of the Year and the Teacher of the Year. So we will recognize her later in a couple of fashions at the recognition assembly and also at graduation. The Mentor of the Year award was named for a longtime coach, swim coach, gentleman named Bob Walthour. And so our Mentor of the Year award is the Bob Walthour Mentor of the Year award. Our Teacher of the Year award didn't have a name attached until now. Padre Parents have made our Teacher of the Year award will be the Whitney Grummon Teacher of the Year award from this moment forward. So I'm going to have some people speak. As you see, we have remembrances. If you happen to pick up the program, we've got some alumni, we've got some current students, and we have some faculty. And we'll hear a bit from Sean at the end. But right now, I would like to invite up here distinguished alumnus, Barrett Brothers. Barrett, come on in.
So before I can read what I have prepared, I wanted to try to say a little something from the heart, if I can, about my dear, dear Whitney. I think in life, as a strategy to kind of cope, I forced a lot of things in the back of my mind that I don't like to deal with right away. And today is the first time I've really been forced to deal with this situation and really address this situation, because I've been really, really trying to make it seem like it's not reality. I mean, how do you really address and come to grips with the loss of someone who is, for lack of a better term, your surrogate mother, you know? I guess all I can say is, I love you, Whitney. I know you're here with us, and I hope this speech makes you proud. All right. So for the entirety of this last week, I've repeatedly asked myself the question, how in the world can I write a speech that does proper justice for the warmest, most kind-hearted, and beautiful soul I have ever had the pleasure of meeting? And the simple answer is, I can't. How could you? It would be like trying to describe the wonder of the ocean through a single drop of water. All I can do is try to share a glimpse of the magic and unconditional love that Whitney Grummon brought into my life and countless others. I first met Ms. Grummon, or as I like to call her, Grum Dog, the end of my sophomore year of high school, which happened to be her first year at CHS. I was picking my classes for the following year, and I'd been hearing so much buzz about this new, spunky, sassy, Prius-wielding, wild child hippie teacher that somehow was able to make AP Language and Comp fun for the first time. No offense, Mr. Palshaw. I suddenly had an urge to see for myself this ponytailed sensation was really worth me challenging myself academically. So determined to learn more about this class, I waited until the lunch bell rang, and I made my way up to room 21. And I walked in and was greeted by the psychedelic sound of Jerry Garcia's voice as it reverberated off the classroom walls. And there was Whitney Grummon in all her glory, writing the day's lesson plan on the board, rocking a flowy poncho that was undoubtedly made of 100% organic recycled materials. She was doing this adorable little two-step dance as she wrote, something a little like this, and she's just kind of writing, and really the only way I could describe it would be groovy, baby. She turned to me and gave me that Whitney smile that makes you feel loved, respected, appreciated, and heard all at the same time. We proceeded to spend the lunch period talking about everything from our favorite books to our greatest fears in life. When I left her room at the end of lunch, I realized I hadn't spent one moment discussing AP Language and Comp, but that didn't matter. I knew regardless of the class's difficulty, I would be a fool to not spend as much time as possible learning both academically and spiritually from this beautiful being. That lunch marked the first of literally hundreds of lunches spent laughing, crying, learning, and growing with Whitney in room 21. As we all know, Miss Grummon was so much more than a teacher. She was a life coach, she was a confidant, she was a counselor, she was a spiritual guru, and above all, she was a dear, dear friend. The fact that one person can wear so many hats in this lifetime and wear them with such exceptional excellence is a testament to Miss Grummon's purpose on this earth. Simply put, she lived her life for others. As author Paulo Coelho once said, the wise are wise because they love, and the fools are fools because they think they can understand love. And I think it's safe to say that Whitney Grummon was the wisest person I've ever met. She's inspired everyone here in attendance today in some way or another by fueling our internal fires, and for that reason, she will never be forgotten. I see Ms. Grummon on a daily basis, whether it's in the evening sunset reflecting off the ocean, the breeze blowing through a field of flowers, or the smile from a stranger. Her beauty is all around us, wrapping us in her love. And at night, when the sun is just set and the first star shines brightly in the sky, I like to think the glow from that star is really just heaven's light reflecting off Whitney's nose ring as she dances that little two-step. I love you, Whitney. Thank you.
Thank you, Barrett. From our current student body, I'd like to welcome to the podium Berkeley Kendrick.
A role model is a person who inspires and encourages us to strive for greatness, live to our fullest potential, and see the best in ourselves. A role model is someone we admire and someone we aspire to be like. We learn through them, through their commitment to excellence, and through their ability to make us realize our own personal growth. We look to them for advice and guidance. Miss Grummon was such a role model for me and all of us that had the great privilege to know her. As a champion of human rights, Miss Grummon encouraged us to use our voice as a force for good. I fondly remember all the lunchtime conversations we had, as well as the lively debates she facilitated during class time. Following one of these debates, I shared with her a comment a German rabbi made following World War II. The most important thing I learned is that bigotry and hatred are not the most urgent problems. The most urgent, the most disgraceful, the most shameful, and the most tragic problem is silence. Miss Grummon not only made us better writers, but she taught us that sometimes silence is the greatest sin. So what I say to you now, I say from my heart. She was an exceptional and gifted human being. She never lost her capacity to smile and laugh, nor to inspire others with her warmth and kindness. I admired and respected her for her energy and commitment to others, and especially for her devotion to both her family and students. For the past several weeks, we have all been trying to come to terms with the devastating loss that her family and the rest of us have suffered. No one who knew Miss Grummon will ever forget her, but we will all certainly remember her. Great was her goodness, and it was her goodness that made her so great. We all love you, Miss Grummon.
Thank you, Berkeley. Next, to the podium is English teacher, current faculty member Carly Barnett. And as she's coming, just a heads up, we're going to do a bit of music, Broke Down Palace, after Carly.
I hope I can do this and get through this. Well, two of my biggest fears in life, go figure, are public speaking and crying in front of people. And I'm doing both right now, obviously. But it's because it's for Whitney. Whitney always had this amazing way of getting you to face your fears and do things that you thought you could never do. I'm really gonna miss that about her. Whitney was fearless, and I'm gonna miss that too. Like last summer, for example, she spent a lot of time on the water, paddleboarding. And I remember I was listening to NPR one morning and I heard about this shark attack, and immediately, thought of Whitney and called her and told her about the story and, gently suggested that maybe she stay out of the water for a while, just in case. And her response was, what are you gonna do? Stop doing what you love because of fear? How many people are in the water every day? And how many shark attacks do you hear about? And how many people die in car accidents each year? And does anyone stop driving? That's a good point, right? And she was right. She usually was. I'm going to miss Whitney for so many reasons. Her logic, her philosophies about life, her no-nonsense attitude. There were times over the years that I got really worked up about something or another. It just seemed like it was such a big deal at the time, but in the grand scheme of things, it was pretty frivolous. And I'd go to her for advice. And she'd listen, and she'd be compassionate, and then she would put things into perspective for me. My favorite response of hers was, is this something that's really going to matter to you in a year from now? Or will you even remember that this happened in 2 years? Such good points once again, and that's all I've ever needed to hear in order to move on. She was wonderful like that. I'm going to miss Whitney's carefree attitude and her conscious decision to ignore the trivial and petty things in life. Like when there was a good band playing, she would get so absorbed in the music that everything else seemed to disappear, and she'd just dance for hours. She didn't care what anybody thought of her moves. She didn't care if anyone was judging her. None of that mattered. She was living in the moment, so full of love and light and energy. She was awesome to watch. I'm going to miss Whitney's accepting nature. She was one of the most accepting people I've ever known, and that's such a beautiful and unique quality to have. I'm sure you've all felt it. You never felt inadequate around her. You never felt dumb or judged. You just felt accepted for who you were and loved. There are so many things I'm going to miss about Whitney. I could go on and on for hours, but I won't. And actually, I probably couldn't because I won't be able to hold it together much longer. So I'll just keep this short and sweet and just say that, Whitney, I miss you so much. You were such a good friend, an amazing colleague. There's nobody else out there in the world like you. Thank you.
Fare thee well, my honey. Fare thee well, my only true one. All the birds that were singing have flown, except you alone. Gonna leave this broke down palace on my hands and my knees. I will roll, make myself a bed by the waterside. In my time, I will roll. my soul. Love you, Miss G.
Thank you, Maddie and Mark. And our next faculty remembrance comes from Suzanne Martin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I had the pleasure of knowing Whitney for several years and have spent many moments in her classroom listening to her interact with students, having conversations over yogurt and granola about our families, and chatting about all things grammar. I recently found an email that she shared with me about progressive tenses, in which she asked me if there was anything she should add to her PowerPoint on these tenses. I laughed. When I read this email, I thought, you're asking me about, progressive tenses? Sure, let me look at it. And just like our total grammar nerds that we are, I went through it and said, could you please explain to them that progressive means it keeps going? And she laughed and she put it in. But then I remember feeling really proud and validated at that moment, because to have someone like the Whitney Grummon ask me for advice, and especially about grammar, made me feel relevant, somewhat intelligent, and valued. And I'm going to believe that so many of us here today have felt special because of Whitney Grummon. So I was sitting in her room recently, just feeling her presence, and I found myself observing her walls and noticing what she felt was important enough for all to see. Beyond her team photos and her family, there were many quotes that speak to who Mrs. Grummon was and what she admired, and I'll share one of them. In the very front of the classroom, right above the whiteboard, is a quote by Socrates that says, "The greatest way to live with honor is to be what we pretend to be." I believe she posted this quote to encourage us to be genuine in our thoughts and actions. If you want others to see you as a person of good character, then be that person. Whitney believed in honesty and honest living. She valued character and did not admire hypocrisy. She lived and behaved as her true self, and that is so refreshing. And she allowed me to be my true self while I was with her. In her presence, I was never afraid to be silly, awkward, blunt, politically incorrect, or vulnerable, because she accepted me for who I am. Lastly, I'd like to share with you who I know Whitney Grummon to be, and yes, the intentional use of the present tense. Whitney is our friend, our colleague, our companion, our parent, our spouse, our sibling, our teacher, our coach, and all that is good in each one of us. She swore like a trucker when it was necessary. She laughed at bad jokes and potty humor. She danced like no one was watching. She listened with both ears. And she loved deeply her family, her friends, her students, her social causes, her music, her travels, her books, and so much more. She made us better. She makes us better even today. And as I shared with my students, Ms. Grummon is not gone to me. She planted a seed in my heart that will continue to grow roots and branches and leaves and flowers that I will hold dear, because that is what knowing someone does for us. It is through building great relationships that we live. I am grateful to have lived through part of my life with this remarkable woman. So I'm going to leave you with another Socratic quote. The really important thing is not to live, but to live well. and to live well meant, along with more enjoyable things in life, to live according to your principles. Whitney Grummon lived very well.
Thank you, Suzanne. Our next speaker is the student, Jake Barter. As soon as Jake is done, musicians, you're doing Glory Bound after Jake.
Describing the amazing woman that was Whitney Grummon, I thought would be easy, but it was quite the opposite. Sure, I could use words like passionate, caring, creative, and wonderful, but these words do not even scratch the surface on who Miss Grummon really was. Describing someone who had such an incredible impact on not only my life, but on basically everyone she interacted with, has been by far the hardest speech of literature I've ever had to impose, and that's saying a lot considering I had Miss Grummon for A flag last year. But I did the absolute best at trying to alliterate her in all of her beauty. The first thing that I thought of when writing this was how Miss Grummon taught, and what made her so different from any other teacher I've ever had. The way she would jump around when talking, and always going off topic and then forgetting what she was supposed to be teaching, made APLAC so enjoyable. For people that may not know, APLAC is known to be an incredibly hard course at Carmel High School. I remember the first day I walked into Miss Grummon's classroom and how I was so scared. But after that first 15 minutes in the classroom, Miss Grummon asked me to stay after class, and what she said to me I'll never forget. She told me to get out of my head and relax. She could tell just from my body language and facial expression that I was really nervous, kind of like I am right now. And no other teacher has ever noticed that before. Miss Grummon had a way of making each one of her students feel unique and important, which is so important because in high school it is really easy to feel lost and alone. Looking back on APLAC and what I learned in that class, I can't help but think to myself, that class should have been so boring. But because Miss Grummon, I look back on that class as my favorite class in high school. From her making fun of me and Angela always talking, to her giving everyone a chance to share their thoughts and feelings in a safe environment, made 6th period APLAC with Miss G so special. And everyone in that class, I'm sure, can agree. The way Miss Grummon encouraged her students to talk and express themselves made the students in her class create a bond. I can honestly say I became closer to each student in my APLAC class last year because I not only learned about punctuation and rhetorical devices from Miss Grummon, but I learned about my classmates and who they really are as people. There was just something about Miss Grummon that made every one of her students want to learn. I have a horrible memory, but even I still know terms like colloquialism and zoomorphism, and if that doesn't show how great of a teacher Miss G is, I don't know what will. Every student that had Miss Grummon can agree that the way she taught was unlike any other teacher. She didn't teach through a course book or through YouTube videos. She taught through herself and her life experiences. She had a genuine passion about what she was teaching, and that passion was contagious. Miss Grummon impacted so many people through her life because she was a teacher that not only had a passion to teach, but to learn from her students. She wanted to learn about all her students. She took the time to learn about me and who I was, not just as a student, but as a person. If you ask any of my former teachers that taught me in my life, they would all probably say basically the same things. I'm a decent B-average student that loves to talk and make people smile even at the expense of others learning. And while that is pretty accurate, Miss Grummon wouldn't just say that because she knew me as a person. She knew that I didn't talk to intentionally disrupt the class or to be disrespectful, but because I simply love to talk. But she didn't have to take the time to learn about me. She wasn't getting paid to do that. It was because she cared about me, as she does about all her students. Miss Grummon guided me out of a really hard time in my life. And she didn't need to do that. That was not in her job description. She didn't need to talk to me at lunch and after class about the Warriors game the night before, and she didn't need to connect with her students emotionally. But she did because that is just who she was. And although these are just my personal experiences with her, I know that she touched the hearts of many and influenced and inspired them to do things they never thought they would. That is why so many of us are gathered here today, because Whitney Grummon positively impacted all of our lives, whether it was directly or indirectly. Now, Ms. Grummon always taught her students to never end a piece of literature with a cliche, so please forgive me, Ms. G. But although Ms. Grummon is gone physically, she lives in the hearts of thousands of students, staff members, and others she's impacted throughout her life. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to hear from Whitney's soulmate, her husband, Sean Parker. Come on up, Sean.
Well, this is about Whitney, but it's also about you. Whitney loved you. This was a good fit for her. She saw in you unbelievable potential. What she told me, being specific about that, Carmel kids are in touch with their privilege. And what she meant by that, Whitney grew up in New Canaan, Connecticut. It's one of the most affluent towns in the world. And her experience was people that were not in touch with their privilege. So in Carmel, she saw potential for you to care, for you to step out of who you are and into the next person and into a world where you could do good. And she is so proud of the many, many alumni that have gone to make a difference in this world. And she's intensely proud of her daughter, who's working with Senator Kamala Harris right now to make this world a better place. And she saw in you each one of you, and this school, and these wonderful faculty that you work with, she saw in you this great potential to make a difference in the world. And that meant the world to her. And she felt privileged. I want to tell you a couple things you probably don't know about Whitney. One thing is, she loved to move furniture like nobody's business. If I was gone there, if I had left the house for more than 5 hours, it would be completely moved, every place. And you'd say to yourself, well, this kind of sucks. But after a little while, you're like, oh, I get it, this is much better. And Whitney would paint rooms too, 3-4 times a month. It was amazing. In 25 years, she never spilled any paint whatsoever, and she never used a drop cloth. I don't know how that fits into the whole thing. I'm just saying she's amazing. That's my point. So, answering the rhetorical question, what would Whitney do? She would care, right? And she wants you to care. And when you walk out of this gym, I hope you can continue to care and to bring that care for others to a place where you can do some good with it. One request I make on her behalf is to not let Amnesty International die. That meant a lot to her. And to have young people joining a cause and being part of a we trying to make a better world, that's what she was into. That's what she loved. And we've heard a lot about who she is. It was several people mentioned her dancing, which to me was one of the great joys of my life. Care when you're dancing. Care when you're living. Care when you're in school. Care right now. She's all about caring. The second thing I would tell you is about her that she would want you to do is to be active. Like I say, she was very proud of what Haven is doing in Washington, D.C. right now, part of making the world a better place, and she would insist that you vote. She wouldn't even care how you voted, but people that don't vote really irritated her. So that I say care, I say vote. And the third thing is from this poster that's hung in my room for about 20 years. Loaning it to you today. My beautiful wife with Carson McCullers' book, Propaganda, Read. And by that, I think it's more than just open a book. I mean, it means step up, be somebody, read. And in doing that, I hope you can fulfill her mission, which is to make you better. That's all she ever wanted to do. And you could give her everything the greatest gift you could give her is to keep on being a better person. I really thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I really am touched by the renaming of the Teacher of the Year award. That means a lot to my family. And a Celtic proverb comes to mind. Dance like nobody's watching, love like you'll never get hurt. That's exactly what Whitney did. That's exactly who she is, and that's exactly what she wants from you. Thank you.
We love you, Whit. Rest in peace. Good afternoon.